You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Athan Hristodulu.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Athan Hristodulu. It's January 28th, 2022, and today I am debuting a new series with you guys that I would like to call Read and React. This is going to be a morning series that I put out for you guys. I'm not necessarily sure the time I'm going to stick it at. I'm going to try some varying times early morning just to kind of see what gets the best results. But the plan for this is to basically be a morning series where I sit down, read up on the news from the day prior, and give my thoughts and reactions to that said news. Now, with today, we have a few different subjects we're going on. If you clicked on the thumbnail, you got a little bit of a preview of what we'll be talking about today. But make sure, as always, hit that like button. If you enjoy what we're doing here, hit that sub button so you don't miss out on all the content as we start rolling into the postseason, or the end of the postseason rather, and into the beginning of the off season. And make sure you follow me on those socials. They are right down below me here to my right here, your guys' left if you're looking at the screen right now. The Greeks Gridiron on Instagram, Athan Hristodulu on Twitter, and you can also find our Facebook page as well. You get all the updates and stuff like that I'm posting about. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm always talking about the games as they're happening and news as it breaks. So make sure you follow me on there if you would like to interact with me while I'm not doing the show stuff. So let's get into it and discuss ourselves some of the news that came out yesterday. The first one, probably the biggest of it all, quarterback Ben Roethlisberger unsurprisingly announced his retirement via Twitter with a nice little video saying goodbye to the Pittsburgh Steelers and their nation. Obviously emotional for him and for the fan base. I'm sure he spent 18 years with that organization. It was obviously, again, no secret that he planned to retire. It was rumored throughout the entirety of the season for the most part. He was, coming out, honestly, I think at the beginning of September. There was rumors of him telling people close to him that this was probably his last ride, the teary eyes and whatnot through the last few games he played this year. Ben Roethlisberger, obviously a Hall of Fame quarterback. The statistics themselves, his numbers, they speak for themselves. 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 victories in said Super Bowl appearances, 418 touchdowns, puts him at 8th for the all-time list. 64,088 career yards is 5th all-time. 5,444 completions made, that is also 5th all-time. And he has the second most wins with a single team in NFL history, only behind Brady at 165. So now with that, for the Steelers, they're going to have to sit down and really try to figure out what they're going to do with their quarterback situation. This has been kind of a topic of discussion throughout the year as Ben Roethlisberger has kind of navigated the kind of up and down play that he had his final season. For the first time in 18 years now, Pittsburgh needs to find a quarterback. And for the first time in Mike Tomlin's entire career, he has to figure out what he's going to do at the position. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do. Hats off to Ben Roethlisberger for a very long career. Whether you like the guy or you don't like the guy, the one thing's for sure is that he was a stalwart of that 2004 draft class. You could argue probably the best quarterback that came out of the draft class. If you're a Giants fan, you might argue Eli Manning, and I'd be there for that discussion as well. But to say the least, quite a career, 18 years. You don't get to do that by accident. He's top 10, top 5 in a handful of categories as far as numbers go. So hats off to Ben. Now, let's get into some coaching hiring news because there was a few things that came out just yesterday as well, some GM moves and stuff. I think probably the biggest one out of them all, because it might have the most potential consequences for it all, is going to be the Broncos hiring former offensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers, Nathaniel Hackett. Tom Pelissero reported this one, that they'll be bringing him in, and it was later on confirmed during pretty much like the later hours of Thursday night where that they were actually bringing him on, and they confirmed it themselves. But he wasn't a play caller for Green Bay, so for those of you that are wondering what he's bringing to the table, he actually wasn't calling the plays. That was Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, but he has been praised for his creativity and his ability to establish relationships with players. So I think the Denver Broncos are really hoping to have a guy like that that's very likable and easy to bring in players, because the Broncos are a team that are pretty close to a playoff push at this point. A lot of people argue they're just about a quarterback away, And, Nathaniel Hackett being the offensive coordinator of the Packers could have some, league-altering effects with how this offseason looks. We'll get into that in a second. But under his tenure as the offensive coordinator for the Packers, 160 touchdowns, which is second in that time frame when he took over the role in 2019. They also only had 37 giveaways as an offense, which is first in the league in that time span as well. So some impressive numbers there. They can score. They protected the ball really well. Hackett also boasts a pretty decent resume as well, going beyond just the Green Bay Packers. He was also offensive coordinator of the Bills and Jaguars under Doug Marrone while he was over there in those two organizations. And a little under the radar fact, I just mentioned the Jaguars, and I actually didn't even notice this. He was kind of the brainchild behind the Jaguars offensive scheme that led to Blake Bortles and the Jaguars making it to the AFC Championship back in 2017 against the Patriots. So, he made Blake Bortles look pretty good up until the end of the season when, from what it sounds like, he was being told that the Jaguars needed to start passing more, and it kind of blew up in their face, and ultimately we got the Jaguars falling flat on their face in that AFC Championship game. Another big positive note here coming from left tackle David Baktiyari. He called him a walking culture kind of guy. So, he really sets the tone in the room and just kind of brings everybody up here. So overall, I think it's a really good signing for Denver, especially they have such a great defense already that's set. It's the offense that needs to work. So it makes sense to bring in an offensive-minded coach. And of course, the big part to this all is that this has already sparked the conversation of Aaron Rodgers potentially going now to Denver, as if that wasn't already a conversation going on. I think it's going to start to double down now, especially depending on how much, depending on how much or how little Nathaniel Hackett might bring over as far as like individual positional, coordinators and things like that over from Green Bay. I don't know how many people might come with him. And if there has been conversation with Aaron Rodgers, how attractive of an idea that would be. And if the Broncos are willing to part ways with some picks to get Aaron Rodgers over there next season, it's definitely opened up quite a can of worms and something we'll have to be watching. So Green Bay fans, if you really thought, either he was probably just going to walk away and retire or he'd be a Packer for another year, this definitely throws a wrinkle into that conversation, and a big wrinkle at that, and I'm very curious to see how that one turns out. Another big signing from yesterday as well. The Vikings announced this one, and this was one that I don't think a lot of people expected, just based off of everything I read. And to be honest with you guys, I haven't really been following like the coaching carousel and the hiring and who's really looking at who. I'm just kind of giving my thoughts on the people that get brought in based off of what I've read about them and kind of found on them, just going through some quick notations of things and articles being written as it comes out. But the Vikings opted to hire Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as their new GM. He's a former Browns executive of vice president of football operations, and the deal is for 4 years, so he'll get some opportunity to really build a unit around there. I think one of the biggest things from everything that I read on him, which I think is a really good thing as well, is, he was praised for his ability to connect with players, which I think is really important because it seems like every single year or, every now and again, something comes up where, the players try to speak out, especially on the teams that are struggling where, they're like, we need to be listened to. And we don't want to just feel like we're working for you guys. Like, we want this to be a relationship. And I think the most successful teams have that type of player, front office, coaching, room kind of relationship where they can communicate and collaborate together to become a successful team. Because I think when it comes to this sort of thing, it can't just be the coaches, barking at the players, telling them what to do. It needs to be a collaborational effort where you have the players and the coaching staff and people in the front office working together to formulate a really good product and a winning organization. It also sounds like he's very willing to work as well. He took on a ton of different duties that I was reading about, scouting and multiple other things while he was working in that VP spot over in Cleveland. So I think this is a really good hire for the team, just based off of the work ethic stuff I've heard about him and just personality traits as well. He apparently is a big analytical guy, but he doesn't like being called that, which I think is really funny because this rise of analytics in the NFL world and even in the sports world in general, I feel like you have a side that loves the analytics and a side that hates the analytics, and there's not really much in between. It's very interesting to see this kind of start to butt their heads as technology gives rise to everything. and everyone just kind of starts to second guess the legitimacy of these analytical, people that are bringing all these numbers to debates and whatnot. And then the counterpoints being, well, it does not pass the eye test or whatever it may be. Very interesting stuff to say the least. But in his press conference, he even said himself that he stood up during the introductory meeting because he was actually working at the 49ers when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan came in. During this meeting, he basically stood up and took his opportunity to introduce himself and say, I don't know what analytics is, but all I know is, basically his approach to this whole thing is thoughtful and intentful, and that's kind of how he looked at his position at the time. So while some people might look at analytics as like, oh, you're just a numbers guy, he looks at as no, this is a more of a thoughtful and intentful approach, and there's purpose and meaning behind that. Me pushing these numbers and looking at these numbers and trying to figure out where they're coming from and what will give us the best product on the field. Also, Lynch himself, John Lynch of the 49ers, praised him as being a very forward thinker. So overall, it sounds like this is going to be a really good hire for the Vikings, and they needed that because this is a team that has been kind of stuck in limbo where they have a really great group on offense, but the defense, man, just cannot seem to get it together. I talked about it all offseason leading up into this season, and I got a ton of flack from Vikings fans over, picking the Packers as a team above them in their division and, questioning that defense. I caught so much flack for it. And if you go back to my NFC North divisional power rankings from the beginning of the season, you will find that all over the comment section there. I think the majority of the views came from that because somehow it sparked some sort of thing in the algorithm where everyone that was a Vikings fan was seeing it and disagreeing with me. But I'm really excited for this. I think the biggest task, obviously, for him going forward to start things off is going to be finding a new head coach to replace Mike Zimmer. And I'm curious to see if the Vikings go with another defensive head coach or if maybe they opt for an offensive head coach and try to find a really strong defensive coordinator to lead the defense. Really curious to see what they end up doing there, considering they have a lot of turnover going in the front office and in the coaching personnel. Last guy to mention here, and this will be my last piece of the news read and react for you guys. The Bears have elected to hire former Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus. This one for me, I know a little bit more on just because I am a Colts fan. ESPN's Adam Schefter was the one who announced this. And again, another one of those things where later on in the evening of yesterday, they announced it officially on their website and everything. He'll be joining the new GM, Ryan Poles. Eberflus was a really good DC for the Colts. I have to say, it felt like, especially during the later half of Peyton Manning's career and through the majority of Andrew Luck's career while he was there, the defense was not really the strong suit. It was the offense carrying the weight of everything. And then from then on, once, the retirement of Andrew Luck happened and then the turnovers and everything around that 2017 time, the defense was not really looking great. But when Eberflus came in, he really took over and reworked this entire defense. We drafted really well and we got some really great players over there in Indianapolis. And, he took what was like almost a dead last team the year prior to him in a handful of categories, ranked like 30th, 31st, 32nd, because the Colts defense was not good at the time, and basically turned them into a top 10 unit. 3 out of the 4 years he was there, top 10 finishes with yardage, tied for 9th in 2021 with 21.5 points a game. They're second in turnovers with 33 total as well. And the guy has the experience. So, Bears fans, I understand a lot of people were hoping maybe for like an offensive-minded coach, to help grow Justin Fields and whatnot. But you guys have a fantastic defense that I think Eberflus can do some really good stuff with. I'm assuming they go for more of like a stronger offensive coordinator to lead more, where Eberflus is going to have his hands a lot more on the defensive side of the football. But the guy has 30 years of coaching, 13 in the pros, 17 in the college ranks. He spent 09 to 10 as a linebackers coach in Cleveland, then from 2011 to 17 in Dallas before he came to Indy in 2018, and he did that massive turnaround with the unit there. And he's a guy from the Tony Dungy coaching tree, and in my opinion, Tony Dungy, an excellent head coach. Obviously, I might be a little bit biased because I'm a Colts fan, but he did a lot of great things in Indianapolis when he was on the Raiders. He built a really good unit there. I'm sorry, not the Raiders. The Buccaneers before John Gruden got to take over and basically use his team to win a Super Bowl. But we won't get into that conversation. But First big task for them, in my opinion, as they have now figured out their head coach and their new GM over in Chicago, will be, of course, finding that offensive coordinator. I think that's probably the biggest and most important role for them, is to find somebody that is not only going to be able to scheme them up some, very multifunctional and dual threat type of scheme there for that offense to run, but somebody who can really grow Justin Fields and help him become the dual threat pro NFL quarterback that they drafted him to be, that they traded up for. I have a lot of high hopes for Justin Fields, and I really like him, and they have such a great defense over in Chicago. If they can just get some more skill players that they'll be able to fit into that offense at running back, at wide receiver, who really knows what's going to happen with Allen Robinson there. If they can build around that, and the offensive line needs so much work over there in Chicago. There's a lot to do there on offense, so they need somebody, one, that can help grow Justin Fields as a professional quarterback, but also help kind of do like a rebuild, because this offense needs a lot of work. That offensive line was disgusting to watch this year, Bears fans. I'm sorry. As a Colts fan, I know bad offensive line play. I watched it for a handful of years, ruin a quarterback that retired early because of it. Love to see you guys become much more successful, and I want to see the success for Justin Fields, but those are probably some of the bigger things that I think they need to handle. Get a great offensive coordinator, hopefully he brings in some guys and some personnel people to rework some of the struggling units you guys have over there. But that is my read and react for this morning for you all. My anticipation is that this starts to get longer and a little bit more formatted and organized as we go down the road. I just kind of spun up this idea the last few days as we get closer and closer to the off season. I want to have more like constant flow of content rolling through the off season. So this will be one of the things I do. And as I said, as it kind of goes along and evolves, it'll become a little bit more organized. It'll become more in depth. And, my goal is to have more and more pieces to discuss with you all as we go through the days. I'm also planning to kind of rework the visual aspects of this podcast here. I want to make use of all this screen that I have around me here, especially this side of me more so than anything, because it's just a window and nothing really going on over there. So expect to see some changes as we get rolling into the offseason, and some changes for the good to help improve the quality of the show. Let me know if you guys have any recommendations of things you want to see me do as we roll into this offseason here. But with that being said, that's all I got for you all today. Enjoy your morning. Have a great Thursday, and I will catch you guys. Or is today Thursday? What is today? Have a great Friday, everybody, because it is Friday, not Thursday. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a good one.